And welcome everyone to the Beautiful Butterfly Show. I'm your host, B.Fly. I want to say happy Tuesday to you guys out there. Hope that this week is treating you kind thus far and all of those great things. But nevertheless, we're back with another great episode. Here tonight, we're going to be bringing a longtime friend of mine, y'all. We've been connected for years. We were just talking about that before we started. A long time, even before the virtual stuff, the StreamYard stuff, Facebook Live. We were doing conversations over the phone. So she is back tonight. I'm talking about Liletta Harlem, you guys. She's back. She's going to be talking about her journey and all the things that she's been through. And tonight we're going to talk about discovering our natural self. And so a lot of times through the things that we experience in life, we kind of lose ourselves and lose our way of doing things and just getting back and taking care of ourselves. And so tonight she's going to talk about that. She's written books. She's been on TV. Hey, she's done it all, you guys. But I'm not going to tell you guys all of that. I'm going to let her talk about that during the show tonight. So as always, I encourage you guys to share the show because you never know what might be said tonight that could impact and empower somebody in their life. So with that said, you guys, we're going to bring our special guest on here. Liletta, you there?
Yes, hello.
How are you?
I am doing great. It is so good to be here.
Oh, we were just talking about how years ago when we first connected, we were online doing the radio and wasn't able to see each other's face then. It was just through the phone or whatnot. And so it's amazing how technology has changed.
That's so true. And your show was actually one of the first shows that I actually shared my story. So it is you were one of the
awesome
first times that I actually I had my organization, but I hadn't really told my story. And so yours was one of the first ones that I did that. So it is an honor to be back.
Yes, absolutely. And so I know that you've been busy, doing different things. And I've always watched you from afar, just working on doing different things. And so it's just been amazing just to see you blossom over the years and so forth. And so for the people out there, this may be their first time seeing your face, hearing your voice. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am Liletta Harlem, and several years ago, I started my journey actually surviving domestic violence. And from that, I decided that I wanted to really use my experience to help other women. And so I created a nonprofit, which is when I was on your show the first go round. And I created a nonprofit called Big Sis and Company. And basically, all about bringing awareness to domestic violence and just the challenges that we have as women, as loving ourselves. And that journey took me amazing places. As you mentioned, I had a TV show for a few years, a local TV show, which dealt with just the issues in the community. And I had a mentoring program for boys in two public city schools in Fairfax and Baltimore. And just was able to do a lot of speaking and educating on how we can love ourselves and how we can really survive when we have gone through some of those type of relationships. So that's how the journey started. And then, I did take some time off for a while. When you're doing that type of work, it becomes very apparent when you need to kind of take a moment and just reset. And because domestic violence was something personal that I went through, I found that through all those years of helping people and working in the community, I hadn't quite healed in the way that I needed to make sure that I was okay mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So I took some time off, which ended up being several years. But of course, that itch to just empower women and help women and help the community be aware of some of our issues and challenges was always there. So I got back into the work. And now, as you mentioned, I've written a couple of books I'm working on two more books, which will be released the end of this year. I do speaking and workshops, and just really all about my mission statement, if you will, is honor,
Yeah.
empower, and refresh. And that's really what I want women and really all of us to be able to have a space to feel that way.
Absolutely. And during that time that you took off, what did you learn about yourself? Because I always find that during those times we learn a lot about ourselves when we take a break. Because as you mentioned, a lot of the times when you're pouring so much into other things and other people, we don't really take the time to pour into ourselves. So we're kind of lacking when it comes to that. And so, what did you learn during that time about the importance of self care and making sure that Lita was okay?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson that I learned is how important it is to be grounded on a foundation that is unmovable. And for me, that
Right.
foundation is my spirituality. And so that
Yeah.
was very key, really, always having faith and always considering myself a spiritual person. But during that
Yeah.
time away, I was able to really just zero in on that faith and build that relationship with God, with my heavenly Father, and just
Yeah.
really become the type of spiritual person that I wanted to be, so that then I could go out and continue helping other people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and getting out, and I know you mentioned about mentoring young men, and so I know a lot of us today are talking about how these programs are needed, and so have you thought about bringing that back, seeing how some of the issues that are out here now concerning our young, especially Black men, young boys.
So, I have been asked that question many, many times.
Yeah, yeah,
And in fact, even with my last book, which is entitled I Can Fix My, when I did like a little small virtual book kind of release party, a lot of men
right.
were actually asking, well, are you going to write a book for us? And what
Yeah,
I have learned is that while I loved being able to have that platform for young boys, I
yeah,
definitely see the benefit in, men being able to uplift other men.
right,
And
right.
what I learned from that boys program is that younger boys, especially, they're already very used to seeing strong women, in their mothers. And at
Absolutely.
times it got a little, I think it was a little bit of a challenge for it to stay where I wanted it to, where it was just them being looking to these men for guidance and structure and encouragement. So for now, of course, you never know how things will go, but for now, I'm sticking with the girls
Yeah,
and the women. Now I do have a couple other businesses that do are or brands, I should say, that do
right,
are for everybody. But as far as the
right.
coaching and empowerment and encouragement, that is for now girls and women only. What I do.
Yeah, yeah. Which
Yeah,
which I can definitely understand because a lot of times, it's just kind of that relatability factor of them being able to relate to somebody who looks like them. You know,
absolutely. Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, definitely can understand that. And so, with that, and I know you mentioned you wrote a book or wrote books as well, and so. I wanted to. I know you talked about your journey, and we talked about how years ago you shared your journey on my show, and so tonight, of course, I know some people are wondering, like, what journey is that entail?
Yeah.
And so, tell us a little bit about what led you to become a speaker, an author, even an advocate when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to women and women environment. Give us your story on how that
Yeah.
is where you are today.
Sure. So I was
Yeah,
in an abusive relationship for about 8 years.
yeah,
And when I left that relationship, one of the things that I quickly came to realize, and I would tell people all the time, is the challenge wasn't necessarily in being in the relationship, because if you when you're in an abusive relationship, you quickly learn how to conform to the abuser. So your every
right.
thought, everything becomes consumed about making this person happy, right? You learn their
Yeah,
what their expressions mean. So you almost become comfortable in the abuse. But for
Right.
me, where the real challenge was is once I left, basically having to reprogram everything, how I thought about things, how I thought about myself, how to even communicate with other people about just where I was and all of that. So I really, once I began healing a bit from that, I wanted to help the community. I wanted to help other women because I quickly learned a lot of women were going through that. A lot of women had left abusive relationships or were trying to leave abusive relationships. And I wanted to help them. I wanted to kind of give them that permission to start the process and to go through the
Right.
process. And I do have to mention one of the things that really, really spearheaded that was back in the day, there was the Russ Parr Morning Show and in the DC area, actually
Yeah.
the syndicate all over. But they used to have a portion where you could send an email in about like a serious topic. And
Yeah.
I remember I had just started kind of tiptoeing around talking about abuse and kind of helping other women. And I was kind of
Yeah.
starting the process. And I sent an email in, and really I was just thanking them for addressing issues like domestic violence. And I told a
Yeah.
little bit of my story, how what I had went through and how I was, happy to leave, but I really wanted to help other people.
Yeah.
So they read that on their show. And they ended up emailing me and telling me that they had so many emails come in. People were calling the show,
Wow.
thanking them and saying, that email that you read, that gave me the power to leave. That helped me. I'm not alone. And I realized in that moment, if one short email could have
Yeah.
that impact on people, it could give them that power, that courage to leave, then I knew if I put my voice out there, it could do wonders and amazing things for women. So
Absolutely.
that was really how I started that, and it's been an amazing journey of helping people through the process, bringing the community in, helping the community understand just domestic violence and really just growing and healing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, what empowered you to come forth and share your experience with domestic violence? I had a guest on last week by the name of Kimberly Coleman, and she talked about how, she had dealt with abuse, actually sexual abuse. For
Mhm.
years, and it wasn't till years later. I think she was in her 20s when she shared it, but she talked about how one day she just had it into her that I have to share this. I have to be free from what's going on. So for you, when was that moment that you said, you know what, I need to share my story? Because sometimes when we share our story, we're kind of hesitant. How are people going to respond? What are they going
Mhm.
to think? Are they going to believe us?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what was that experience like for you? Getting to that point to share your story.
Sure. So there were really a couple of things that happened. So of course, when I'm telling this story, the first part of this, right, I'm talking about just the beautiful part of it and the
Yeah.
journey. But the other part of it, leaving, that relationship and the process was very dark, was very depressing, very sad, hopeless. And I went through one of the darkest periods of my life when I left that abusive relationship. I was
Yeah.
hospitalized for suicide, on suicide watch, things like that. And I remember it was one point I had been released from the hospital. I was just dealing with depression, feeling hopeless, and I remember just sitting there and thinking and praying. And the thought came to my mind: I have to make what I'm feeling and what I've gone through mean something. And it
Yeah.
was that thought that really spearheaded everything else because I thought if I don't share this, if I don't let other people know about this process, if I don't give other women the permission to talk about exactly what I'm dealing with, then for
Absolutely.
me it won't have been worth it. It really will be hopeless. So for
Yeah.
me that was really the driving force. And honestly, since that point, that's really how I've dealt with all like depression and other type of things that I've gone through.
Yeah.
I have to make it worth it. And for me, that's by helping other women understand and have the permission to deal with the very same things that I deal with.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I also wanted to ask you, in that relationship of dealing with domestic violence for an 8 year time span, when was that moment when Lita discovered I've had enough? I'm leaving. I'm getting out of this situation. Do you remember that day and that moment of when you decided you had enough?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do. So there was a period of time where I would leave the situation. I would go home to my family, to my mom
yeah,
and my sister, and then I would, come back because
yeah,
ultimately I didn't want that relationship to end. I wanted it to just be how it was when things were good.
yeah,
And they could be really, really good. So that's what I really wanted. But that went
yeah.
on year in, year out. And one time I had called my mom to pick me up, and it was kind of the usual thing. She came out there to where I was, she picked me up. We're driving home, and I told her specifically what had happened
Hmm.
that particular time. And for her, it was her final moment. She pulled over and she looked at me and she said, "Are you ready to leave?" And
Mm,
I said very calmly, I said, no. I said, I
wow,
just want him to be the person that he can be. And my
wow.
mom turned the car around, drove me back home. And I'm like, where are we going? She
Yeah,
said that she was like, you are my firstborn. I love you. I would give my life for you,
yeah,
but I can't do this. She
yeah.
said, call me when you are actually done with being treated this way.
Wow.
And a year later, series of events, all the same, the abuse kind of just continues the same cycle.
Hmm.
And I finally had that moment where it was almost like the entire time flashed in front of me like a movie reel. And I
Wow.
was like, I'm done. I'm done. Whatever it means, whatever comes from this, I'm done. And I picked up
Yeah.
the phone and I called my mom and I said, I'm done. And she said, are you sure? And I said, I am. And she came and picked me up. So
Wow.
that was my moment.
Yeah. And oftentimes when I hear women share their story about domestic violence, it's a similar situation where you mentioned how oftentimes they don't want to leave. They just want that person to change and get
Mhm.
better. So
Yeah.
is it that you recognize what's going on, but you believe that the person can get better? Is that kind of what? Yeah,
Yeah, so it's a couple of things, and this kind of goes into one of my newest favorite subjects about just the brain itself,
yeah,
because the brain is all about patterns, right? And I always use the
right.
illustration, just like when you first start a job, you have to kind of put it in GPS or whatever, but
Yeah,
eventually,
yeah,
you know that thing, right? That's
yeah,
that's what the brain does. So when it comes to relationships with abusers, in general, we have to say that because, of course, there's exceptions and all of that. But in general, typically the abusers are not just the side that you see that's abusive.
right.
Generally, they are very charismatic, very loving. In my case, I mean, he would show me the world. I mean, I had limos come to the job and pick me up, when it was the high, right? When it was the
Yeah,
wonderful times and it was gifts and love and passion and all of those things. So the brain wants that. So when it
yeah,
sees the other side, it's constantly thinking. Eventually, it gets to the point where it says, if I just wait a little longer, if I just hold on a little bit, if I just do what it is, whatever I've done wrong, if I just wait and do the right thing,
yeah,
eventually it's going to go back to that person that they've shown me they are. And so
yeah,
that's how you just get stuck in that cycle that just
yeah,
continues to repeat itself. The
yeah,
problem is that it tends to get worse and worse and more aggressive and more violent, to where we always encourage women that are in that cycle, it most likely will get worse. It most likely will get to the point where you may even be afraid for your life, because it's
right.
all about power and control.
Yeah,
And so it's a very sad and dangerous cycle, but for the victim inside. And that's why I always say, let's ask the right question. Let's not ask, why doesn't she leave?
yeah,
Let's ask, why does the person abuse, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
really, that the woman is staying because it's what she knows, it's what's familiar, and she loves that person, and she
mhm.
just wants it to be the way she has seen it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that process, and I'm glad that you said that about asking, the abuser, why are they doing, what they're doing? Because a lot of times that is the common answer. Like, why don't they just leave? It's easy to just, walk away. But I remember a lady that I had on my show years ago, and she talked about how when she was in a domestic violence relationship or marriage, and she compared it to like being into different seasons of the weather. Some days it's that sweet moment. Then some
Mhm.
days, it's the coldness and the bitterness that you feel coming from that person. And so
Mhm.
is that kind of, the experience that you experienced it well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think most people need to understand that most women are not staying in a situation where it is bad and volatile and violent all the time. Most
Yeah.
women, now again, there's exceptions and there's all different types of circumstances, but usually that person, and that's why most of the time people in their life, the neighbors, the community, the religious organization, many
Yeah.
times they're shocked. They're like, that person has been
Right.
doing this because
Yeah.
they don't normally show that side, right?
That's
And
right.
so that's why the person is staying, because they're looking for that person that everybody loves to keep showing
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you hear these stories about, how women talk about these men, and oh, he may have been a pillar in the community, and a stand up guy, professional, and a sweetheart to people. So, like you said, when people come out and say, "I was being abused," the first thing people think are you kidding me? Like, this is not the person that we see.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so from that moment on, when you got out of that relationship, going forward, how did that situation kind of mold you for future relationships? Like, were you very guarded, and what was Lita's rules, going into new relationships from that point
Yeah,
forward? Yeah.
yeah, and I do talk about that in my second book,
Yeah.
because when you first of all have experienced certain trauma and trials as a child, which I
Yeah.
did, there were
Yeah.
certain abandonment issues, not growing up with my father, things like that. So
Yeah.
you already are kind of looking for love. It creates this environment in your heart that you're just wanting to kind of accept anything that looks and feels like love and care. So leaving that abusive relationship, I was still vulnerable. I was still had the same issues that kind of made me more open for that type of a relationship. So
Yeah.
it took years of healing to actually be able to understand my own process, my own cycle, the type of
Yeah.
relationships that I was gravitating to, because I really needed to understand why and
Yeah.
recognize that just because this person says I love you, or says you're beautiful, or
Yeah.
treat you nice, that's not the only sign of what love is. And to learn how to
Absolutely.
look deeper at what a healthy relationship should look like. And that's
Yeah.
really, again, going back to what I said, taking that time off and getting spiritually grounded. I could add the spiritual component back in there, and be able to say, I want a relationship where this man would act and respond the way the Bible says he should. And so that
Right.
became the foundation for me and helped me to be able to get married again and have a
Yeah.
healthy
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I was going to ask you about that because now you see that glow from the inside out,
Yeah.
and they are the cutest couple, you guys. If you follow her on social media, they are like the absolute cutest couple. And
Thank
so,
you. Thank you.
with that, how has a new husband, how has that worked together? How has he supported, knowing the past history, and moving forward? How important was that to have someone who understood your past, but was also willing to work through and with you through those things?
Yeah, that was very important. And so even when we were just friends before dating, we always had a really
Yeah.
good friendship. We always could really talk about things. And then when we started dating, I was very transparent and very open about my previous relationship and just some of the challenges and places that had taken me and where I was now. Because again, I'm like, hey, listen, this I don't want a third marriage. So this has got to be it. So I wanted to be very open and honest. And my husband is just a very accepting and loving person anyway. But I will say, and it's good to note. So our first year of marriage, now at that point, I had been years past the abuse and all of that, and you know, reset spiritually and all these good things. But year one was such a challenge. And the reason why is because I was back into a true intimate partner relationship. And some of the things that I thought I had worked through were starting to resurface. And there was post traumatic stress coming in the picture. And there were times when I was looking at my husband and I was seeing the old abuser's face. That's just how, it was so powerful and intense. And so, honestly, I have to say it really was our faith and being committed to working together through it. Because it was just something neither one of us could fully prepare for. I wouldn't have known I was going to be kind of triggered, in the way I was. And then this was brand new for him, like, whoa. But we were, exactly, but we learned to kind of laugh through it. And I can definitely be someone that's very over the top and dramatic. And I remember one time it was just a really bad moment, just, triggers and all of that. And I was just like crying and losing my mind in my dramatic way that I could get. And when I looked up and looked at his face, he literally was just looking at me like, just kind of blank, and it made me laugh so hard. But he was like, I didn't know what was happening, but I figure eventually you were gonna come back. I don't know where you went, but I knew you were gonna come back. So we have learned to just laugh and enjoy the process, and we are in our 7th year now. So we're hanging in there. We're hanging in there. But of course, our faith keeps us going.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that one of the things, because I know you also have the book, Celebrating a Legacy of Courage and Resolve. And so is that kind of what led to that book once you came out of that situation?
So that was actually a different part of the journey. So my husband and I moved in with my grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah, we moved in. We were there for about 3.5 years. So we had been only together like a year and a half. And we moved in to help. Just at that time, she really just needed someone there. My grandmother's now 90, so and still doing great actually. But
what a blessing!
It is, yeah. So we moved in to just help kind of care for her. And she, after about 2 years or so, she fell and she broke her pelvic bone, I believe it was. And so my grandmother's just independent, feisty. And I remember that the doctors had told her, because, they were kind of limited in what they could do, but they said, we're going to start physical therapy at your age. Sometimes, you just don't really bounce back. You may not walk again. Right. Well, telling my grandmother that was like, oh, okay. Watch this.
Like, all right, if you say so.
Right, exactly. And I watched my grandmother work so hard. I mean, doing physical therapy at like 95, 96, forcing herself through the pain to move. And she's walking and dancing and everything just fine now. But I remember watching her and I was thinking, my grandmother is someone who everyone in the family has always looked up to her. Just she's owned homes and, just been just this amazing independent woman. And in that moment, I looked at her and it just spoke to me that this is the legacy. And then I thought about my mom and my aunt, and I said, these women, they've gone through a lot of struggle, a lot of heartache and pain, but they are the strongest women I know. And what they have passed on to us, that strength, that resiliency, that's the legacy. And it was because I never really was planning to write a book, but I said, I need to write about this. I need to write a book that's going to honor that legacy. And so that's what that book is about. It's their stories and basically how their stories of strength and courage. And I mean, like I said, they've gone through it: domestic violence, single parent, being a young mom, all of that. My grandmother, through the Great Depression. I mean, like they've gone through so much. To be able to sit down and talk with them and them share their stories again and just build them up and remind them of the strength and the courage that they have. It was an amazing experience, and people just really loved the reading about it and felt like they kind of got to know them. And my aunt actually has since passed away. And I was so glad, though, that before passing away, I mean, we wouldn't have known, that was going to happen. But the fact that she got to read about that and she got to see herself, and I did like a little makeover for them for the book release. So it was just so special to me that I got to give them that honor and let them see that. And my aunt, who was still working at the time, doing like volunteer work at the hospital, she was like, I'm a celebrity. She told all her coworkers about it, and it was passing the book out, signing autographs. So it's just so special, that I got to honor them with that book. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's awesome because it's something that you can cherish forever. And it will just, continue on for generations and generations. And it's something, most of us don't think about. And I'm thinking like, wow, that is a good idea to actually have a book, from years from now. You can go back and here's grandma's story, here's auntie's story, here's mom's story, because oftentimes we don't realize the connection that all of our stories have sometimes. We think we're alone in some of the things that we deal with. And like you said, you realize how, different people in your family went through some of the same experiences you did,
So. Yeah. And that's one of the things that people that read the book, that's one of the biggest responses that I got, is that it made them look at their own families. And like you said, their moms, their grandmothers, their aunties, or just even women in the community, and think about those moments. And then they were doing like little celebrating a legacy, little events and little like virtual parties. And,
I'm thinking over here to myself like, what can No, I love it. I'm actually,
Yes. I encourage anyone, get the book and do it, right? Have a book
project. Absolutely. Absolutely love it. Let's see here. We have Kelly, if I can get the comment to come up. Okay. Kelly says, Lita, your strength to publicly speak hard truth is amazing. What would be your best advice to other women who cannot release what they've gone through by speaking out? Excellent question.
Excellent. Wow. Thank you so much for that, Kelly. First of all, thank you for that compliment. I really appreciate that. I always say, even when I coach women, I don't want people to do something that becomes more stressful to them, right? But I do always encourage women to understand that there is something therapeutic about sharing your own story and about telling people what you've experienced. And I have committed to being extremely transparent, but I recognize that all women can't do that. But even if the healing and the doors you open when you're able to even just say, you know what, I've gone through that. You don't have to necessarily say why you've gone through being depressed or what your childhood was like. But when you can say to another woman, when you can really even say to yourself, you know what, I've gone through this thing, I've gone through this maybe dark place, or I've overcome this challenge, whatever that is, and you can feel good about it and be honest with yourself and with others, there's healing there. And it's not just healing for you, but it's healing for others, and I just encourage people to first just start with being honest with yourself and taking a look at where you've been, but with the goal of appreciating that you have gone through that thing and now you're here, and you can help heal yourself and other people by just sharing a little bit of that.
Absolutely. Which is so true, because a lot of times in sharing our story, a lot of things are exposed, and so you never know how those things will connect with other people and the tension that it can create. But also, like you said, there's an importance of being able to release that, from you and your experiences. And I think that a lot of times it's that hesitation of sharing that story, because just to be honest, when we share our stories, people can be really critical,
Yeah.
and not understanding that's your story, that's your experience.
Hmm.
And I know that nobody can take that away from you, because that was your experience. So no matter if people agree or disagree with what you have said, that's your truth, that's your life, and your experiences. So yeah,
And even sharing that part of it for me, because the whole thing is the experience, right?
yeah,
So when I mentioned before, when I was, dealing with the depression out of leaving that abusive relationship, probably what limited some of my own personal healing and growth is because I was so worried about explaining why I was depressed. So many people,
hmm,
if they knew about the abuse, they were like, "Well, you should be happy. You're gone from that. What is the problem? Why? What do you mean you walk into a room and you can't open your mouth and talk? Like that's not who we know you to be. Like what's wrong?
right,
Snap out of it." Like I heard all of it, right? But
yeah,
the thing is, we all hear that. And to your point, we all go through those things. So for
yeah,
me, even the darker parts, the ugly parts, the shameful parts, I personally tell, as dignified as I can, I
yeah,
share those parts because it's something we are all going through. And so many people have stunted their healing growth because they don't realize that this is part of the process or that other people are going through it. And the
yeah,
more you understand how normal it is, the easier it is to start to adjust and to start to make progress and to start to grow and heal. And then the
yeah.
amazing thing happens when you can help other people do the same thing.
Absolutely. And speaking of helping people do amazing things, your book entitled I Can Fix Mine. And so it is a guide to self discovery and healing through therapy and reflection. It also includes poetry, 31 days of affirmations. And so, with this book, what inspired um, and motivated I Can Fix Mine?
Yeah. So as I was writing the first book, and like I said, it was very, wonderful to be capturing these stories. But I was also dealing with some of my own personal struggles, at the time.
Yeah.
And what I recognized is that we as women, many times we are so focused on fixing everybody else, or we are looking for everyone else to fix us.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of for so many women, it's hard. We just kind of pick one or the other, right? At any given time, we're like
Right.
super woman, super, mom, wife, whatever it is. Or we're like, please, somebody help me. And we're kind of getting into these bad situations and relationships because we're looking for someone to help us, to heal us, to make us feel
Hmm.
better. And
Hmm.
so at that point in time, I started back into therapy because I knew where how I was feeling could lead. And that was again part of why I'm glad I took that time to reset, because now I recognize, okay, when
Yeah.
I'm starting to think this way, how do I shift? How do I get back to where I need to be?
Right.
So I started back into therapy, and it was one of the best decisions that I made because it just helped me ground again,
Right.
recenter, and get back on where I wanted to be. And so through that process, again, because for me, it has to be worth it. And for me, it's helping other people. That's
Yeah.
kind of my formula.
Yeah.
And I said, I gotta write about this. I gotta help women know, listen, fix ourselves, right? Let's
Hmm.
focus
Hmm.
on getting rid of some of these traumatic things and how we see ourselves. And because it
Yeah.
really boils down to that,
Yeah.
our circumstances and situations make us see ourselves in a certain way.
Hmm.
So I said, I have to write about this.
Yeah.
And I did. And that has been amazing. I have a coaching program that I utilize the book with, and my clients are just, it's healing even for me when we
Yeah.
go through these sessions and we go through the book, and to just see them making the changes and learning to love themselves and learning to see themselves differently than what maybe people or other traumatic things in their life have told them that they are.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
I love it because also one of your mottos that you use is weak. Weak isn't useless. It is a
Yes.
mission to bring awareness to mental health. And so, talk about weak, and how impactful weak is in your vocabulary in your life.
Yes, yes, yes. So it's interesting. So I have a show, a video series called Pivotal Moments.
Yeah,
And yeah, so that started over the pandemic, and it basically is just like a 15-20 minute video series where I talk to people about a pivotal moment that they've experienced in their life and just how it impacted them and
yeah,
what message they have for other people. So I was doing that show and I had two guys on, one friend of mine that I've had for many years, JJ. And so after the show, we were talking about a whole different topic, but after the show, we were just kind of sitting around talking, and we started just talking about men and the challenges that men have with mental health. So as I mentioned
mhm,
earlier, I
yeah,
usually leave that for the men like y'all deal with that. But they said, JJ said, Lita, you got to do a platform. You have to make this on your platform. You have to
yeah,
talk about this topic. So I said, okay. So I did a two-part event, and of course I did the women, but that was more of like a celebration of womanhood. And then I did a men's event where I had a panel of men, and they talked about just dealing with mental health and the issues that come from that. It was powerful. These men really represented JJ, Dr. Oliver T. Reed, which I know you know.
yeah,
Yeah, Dion, Nelson, Mark Wiggins. I feel like I may be leaving someone out, but they represented, they really talked about just the struggles that men can have and how to overcome that, especially as men of color.
yeah,
So one of the statements that JJ said in there, and it's just amazing how things work. He made the statement, he said, men tend to think that we don't want to really talk about when we're feeling down or depressed because we see that as weak. And we tend to think of being weak as being useless. But
right,
if we can understand that weak doesn't mean we're useless, it just means that we in that moment need support. When I saw that, because it was videoed, and when I watched it back, I was like, oh, that is such a powerful statement. I need to
absolutely,
do something with that. So I reached out to JJ and I was like, so I'm taking that and I'm going to do something with that. And he was like, okay, Lita, can you just put my name on it? And I was like, got it. So I created a whole brand with the week isn't useless. It's t-shirts, it's mugs, it's all of that, with the goal to just help encourage people to know that when you're down, depression or otherwise, I've had people who have thanked me because they have chronic illness, and they're like, man, I always feel so weak and I always feel so useless. And
hmm,
your mission has really helped invigorate me and remind me that I'm not useless. It's really for just showing people that no matter what it is in that moment that has you weak or down, you're not useless. You simply need support. And we all will be in that state at some point in our life. And it's
absolutely,
taken off. We did a pop up shop, and I had people literally recovering addicts and recovered depression and all that just thanking me and getting the shirts and donating to the cause. So it's really been an amazing journey.
that is awesome, absolutely awesome. And so, on your journey of inspiring and encouraging people, one of the things I heard you mention was therapy, and how it helps you. But I wanted to say it also helps people around you because, like you were saying with your husband, so when you have those moments of kind of the outer body experience, it helps him to kind of, be able to
Yes.
deal with that as well. And so I always, want people to stress the importance of therapy, especially in the African American community, because it's sometimes, can be a very cliche thing because of things that we have learned generationally about keeping things to ourselves and so forth. And so, what would you say to the person out there who is hesitant about going getting therapy, hesitant about, sharing and releasing those things? What would be your words of encouragement to them about, getting therapy?
Well, first of all, I am hashtag team therapy. I will probably, I think I've embraced that I will be a therapy person for life. And the reason why is just like you said, my encouragement to women is this: you don't have to feel bad. It's
Absolutely.
really just that simple. We are
Yeah.
so conditioned to just accept feeling this way and feeling sad or not loving ourselves or just going through the motions. And many women don't even know the first place to start to even change
Right.
that. So, my
Right.
encouragement is there is a beautiful place on the other side of
Yeah.
feeling bad and feeling worthless and go and just doing for everyone else and getting into, bad relationships.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful place that you can be. It is within
Yeah.
reach if you get
Absolutely.
the help. And, whether that is a professional licensed therapist, whether it's through a coaching program like the one that I offer, whether it's through some other means, it starts with conversation. It starts
Right.
with having a conversation with yourself and with someone that you feel is safe and that you can trust so that you can show up. And I always quote, if people are familiar with Little Brother, there was a rap group, and they had this song back in the day, and there was this line in it that said, do you really want to win or just look good losing? And that
Mm.
thing has stuck with me all these years because it's so powerful. So many
Yeah.
times we're looking good losing, but you
Yeah.
can win. You can actually not just like say fake it till you make it, which I kind of don't like that quote. You can
Right.
actually really make it and not have
Yeah.
to fake
Yeah.
it, right? You can actually win.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so get the help you need by whatever means. Talk to some, start with the conversation. Start by
Yeah.
having the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, and that helps to for us to discover, our natural selves. Because the thing about it is self care, and I don't think I realized myself the importance of self care until probably within the last year or two. I think this pandemic really boosted the self care for me because
Hmm.
you get so busy, like you said, pouring into other people, doing so much for other people, helping other people, counseling other people, that by the time it comes to yourself and your own issues, we have nothing left. We have nothing left to give ourselves. So it's important to recharge, and like you said, refresh ourselves to know that we can proceed and we can move through life in a great way and be great people, so
That's it. That's it. Yeah, and it's
absolutely.
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful feeling. Like I said, the clients that I work with, it's so funny because majority of them are like, I can't believe I'm actually opening up and talking to you. Like the first couple of sessions, they're kind of like, I don't know what I want to say, and by the next session, they're like, so how do we renew this whole coaching thing? Because let me tell you what's happening, and sometimes we just need the safe place and the safe space and the permission that it's okay. You're not, lower or anything like that because you now need to talk about some of that stuff that's inside. So yeah,
Yeah.
I 100% encourage it.
Absolutely. And so, of course, for the folks out there who want to, be able to take advantage of your coaching opportunities, how do they go about connecting with you and making that happen?
Sure. So you could always find me on my Facebook page, which is My Natural Me Woman. The Instagram page is also My Natural Me Woman. So you
Okay.
can start there. In the bio, it has the link so that you can schedule time with me. You can go
Yeah.
directly to my website, which is my name. So it's lilitaharlem.com.
Yeah.
I put my nickname in there. I should have put the Lilita, but yeah, lilitaharlem.com. You can message me through Facebook. You can just send me a message. I'm pretty accessible. So yeah, if
Yeah.
you just reach out in any of those means, you can email me. We can definitely get something set up.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as I have asked all my guests this year, with the pandemic going on, so much just taking place, what have you learned about yourself throughout this pandemic?
I would say that I've been reminded of my own resiliency and being
Yeah.
able to tap into those places that have always been there, that have gotten me through, as I mentioned, some of those darkest places. It's reminded me that it's there, and it's
Yeah.
been beautiful seeing it even bubble up. And if you think about it, the books, the show, all of that was birthed during the pandemic. So it's been just amazing to see myself reminded that, yeah, you got it. You've got
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And so, of course, we know that you're always working on things. And so, what are some up and coming things that you have in the works that folks can be on the lookout for?
Well,
She's like, well,
quite a few things. You're right. I am always working. So I'm excited because, and I hadn't even mentioned, I have a business networking group membership. So that's also, I'm
okay,
developing that. We're growing that. It's called Business Crossing Network. And so that's,
great.
again, just helping entrepreneurs have the resources and everything they need. So we're growing that. But under
Yeah,
my natural me, I'm excited because I'm going to be working with a couple of other therapists and coaches, and we're going to be doing group sessions that
nice.
really center around grief and loss, and just
Mm,
some of, divorce and things like that. So we have that coming up.
yeah.
And I have two more books coming. I have a poetry book coming, which I
Oh
am really
wow.
excited about. Yeah, because over the years, I've always enjoyed writing, but I never really thought of myself as a poet because I tend to write as
Right,
kind of like therapy.
right.
So that's coming out. And then my fourth book, which is entitled The Power Resides at the End of I Am. And I
I
am
love it.
very, very excited about that.
Yes.
That's a very powerful book. So yeah, those are kind of the newer things that are on the
Yeah.
horizon.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So we're definitely gonna have you back on to discuss those, because just the titles in itself sound like they're going to be absolutely amazing. And so,
Yeah.
I am thankful for people like you who share their journey, because it helps someone else to get through their journey. Sometimes
Yeah.
somebody listening tonight may be still going through that journey. They may still be in that situation. And so you never know, as I always say, what can be shared through the show that could encourage, and empower somebody to make that change
Yeah.
along their journey. So I'm thankful that you have always been willing to share your journey and be able to help others through it also. And for the folks out here, make sure you connect with her. The groups sound awesome. And so she's got a lot of great things in the works. You got any final words or thoughts you want to share with the people out here?
Well, I really want to also say thank you to you. It's just so refreshing. Someone, like, I think we were saying, it might be a decade ago,
Yeah.
but it's been a while.
A long
But
time?
to just,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
to see you still doing your thing and having platforms like this for women, especially, to be able to share our voices. I really appreciate that, and I commend you for that. And just appreciate you. And I think my final thing is just to, again, remind women that you deserve to feel honored, empowered, and refreshed. So do whatever it takes so that you can experience that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And once again, I am just super proud of you. I can't wait for these other books and other projects to come out, because I know they're coming. Like I said, she's always on the move. And so, you guys, make sure you go and connect with her on Facebook, Instagram. I have put the information down at the bottom of the screen, and I'll also be putting it on the Beautiful Butterfly Show page as well. So you guys can check her out, connect with her, all of those great things. And so I did want to ask you, because I know you mentioned therapy and sometimes having those moments. And so at the end of the day, when things get kind of hectic, how
Mhm.
does Lolita pour back into herself?
Mm, mm. I have learned to stop and pause
Yeah,
and go back to that foundation, which is my faith.
yeah,
That really is the key. And sometimes my friends joke with me because there's all type of ways to read, the Bible. There's online, there's apps
yeah,
and that. But I'm old school. I have a big study Bible, and I'm like, I have to feel the pages, like I have to connect, which is
Yeah.
actually one of the things I learned several years ago, even with depression, that you have to engage your senses elsewhere to kind of break that focus of
Right.
just being locked into that dark place. So for me, when at the end of the day, when I'm having those moments, it starts with me going to the Bible, feeling the pages, really reading,
Yeah.
praying, getting back centered with that relationship. And then I'm usually know what I need to do next in order to stay in a good space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely beautiful. And a great note to end off of, because, with all of us through trying times of our journey, this pandemic, our faith is what really, really carries us through these moments and gets us through. So, of course, once again, thank you so much for coming on here. We won't let it be another decade. We're gonna do this again sooner. And so I'm gonna find our old show. Because I just recently saw it in my shows, and so I'm gonna repost that.
That was
But yeah,
awesome.
it's
Yeah.
definitely been some time
Yeah.
between that, but we won't let it be that long this next time. So
Right.
once
Even
again,
though we'll still be looking cute in another decade, right?
exactly. We just get younger and younger.
You
We just
know
get
how we do.
absolutely. But it's been a pleasure having you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
again so much. I hope you have a great rest of your evening and week. And I'll be definitely talking with you again soon.
Sounds good. Yes. And I gotta have you on
Absolutely.
the show next.
Yes,
Yes. Let's do it.
we will do that. All right.
Yes.
You have a good one.
Thanks, you too. Thanks again.
You're welcome. All right, you guys. That was Liletta Harlem, you guys. Make sure you go and connect with her on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of those. My Natural Woman on Instagram, on Facebook, or you can go to her official website, www.liletaharlem.com, to catch up with her, what she has going on. Also, her support groups, all those great things. So, and you can head over to Amazon as well and check out her books, and I will be dropping them on the Beautiful Butterfly Show page as well, you guys. So, with that said, we're gonna get ready to get out of here, you guys, and so we're guys gonna see you, I believe, next Tuesday, same time, same place, right here on the Beautiful Butterfly Show. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in tonight, and to those out here who will catch the replay, I appreciate you as well. So we're gonna get ready to get out of here. I am B.Fly. You guys have a great evening.